I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back. Yet another episode of the London is Blue podcast coming at you with part 2 of this week, joined by Nick. And if you missed it, our guest, Liam Twomey from The Athletic. Part 1 was all about Project Restart, Chelsea getting back to playing, what that looks like, testing, home and away venues, match schedule rules, all that stuff. And then we definitely talked about N'Golo Kante specifically. So go check it out. But part 2, guys, we are going to be talking about transfer news, rumors, gossip, whatever you want to call it. So this will be definitely very interesting. But before we get into that, again, Nick, I want to give you an opportunity to plug a new partner for the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Signables is back on. We're doing a giveaway with them this week on our Instagram, so go ahead and check that out. If you're hearing this on Wednesday, it should be live by Wednesday as we pre-record these. Signables is an authentic signature product that's made out of genuine matchball leather. It's Chelsea specific. There are 5 Chelsea players available with Pulisic, Kante, Aspi, Willian, and Pedro. They are offering our listeners 20% off of all purchases at signables.com. You've got to use the code LIB20, 20% off. But go check it out and let us know what you think. We'd love to get your user feedback. And if you have one of these, send us a photo of it.
All right, Liam, it is time to talk about transfers. Back in April, you wrote about what could potentially be a weird transfer market. I guess one of the parts you pulled out was the original plan that you had written was, the original plan had been for quite sweeping changes this summer with 6 or 7 incoming transfers, but the pandemic has forced a rethink. And I think we're talking about Chelsea specifically or the Premier League in general.
That quote was from an anonymous Premier League club's head of recruitment. So it
just shows an example of what a Premier League team was going to do and how this has completely just wiped that and changed it.
I don't think that was a particular insight into Chelsea's strategy, but it does give a good overview of what some Premier League clubs were planning.
So they're going from 6 or 7 incoming transfers, and they said now we're maybe 2 or 3 who we feel stronger with a far stricter budget. No one really knows how it's going to go. They're expecting prices to come down, no more 100 million players, and they're going to be looking for free transfers and bargains, essentially, and things we'll see. So I totally chopped those quotes up to try to, simplify it. Might have failed, but I guess any update from what you've been hearing with clubs in the transfer and their transfer strategies, really, it's not even, I guess that's what you would call it right now.
Well, I think the first thing to say is there hasn't been a ton of movement in the last couple of weeks because clubs have been so focused on the problem of playing again, getting the season going again. And I think once they know where they stand in terms of, are we going to have to give broadcast money back, or do we have that? Can we count on that money going forward? And where do we actually finish in the league over these last 9 or 10 games? Then I think they'll be in a better position to be a bit more definitive about how they're approaching the transfer market. But in all my time covering football, I've never known a transfer market that is harder to predict than the next window. I mean, we don't even know when it's going to be. The Premier League clubs are currently talking about maybe shifting it from sort of August to September time, but that would have to be agreed across all of Europe's major leagues, and they're all running to slightly different timetables. So it's a messy one. One thing I did write a month or 2 ago, which still stands, is that I think Chelsea are in a better position than most clubs to potentially separate themselves in this window. I mean, you've already seen I saw a report a few days ago from Matt Law, who's obviously a very credible source on all things London football, saying that Arsenal and Tottenham are going to be dealing in free transfers this summer. I don't think that will be the situation at Chelsea. So I think that, for example, they have an opportunity to potentially separate themselves from those 2 clubs if they spend wisely, if they build around this homegrown core that That's the advantage of having a really good academy. Is at a time like now, you've got players that have cost you very, very little to produce, but can be key parts of your future plans. And I think you've seen with what Chelsea have done off the pitch, they haven't furloughed anyone. They haven't made anyone take a pay cut. They were talking to the players about a potential pay cut, but they parked that conversation for now. And as long as that situation is the way it is, then it's easier for them to turn around and spend 30, 40 million on a player a few months from now. Tottenham can't really do that after trying to furlough a load of staff and then having to publicly backtrack when there was a big backlash, So I think they've got an opportunity. A lot of it depends on what Abramovich wants to do, how aggressive he wants to be. And the other unknown, the other thing that we haven't had a proper answer to yet is, what are UEFA going to do about financial fair play? Are they going to relax it for a period? Are they going to suspend it for a period? Because if they do, then this will be the first time since FFP came in 2011, 2012, when clubs that are owned by states, City and PSG, and clubs that have billionaire benefactors like Chelsea, will not be limited in terms of their spending. Their only limits will be the ones they set for themselves. So if that's the situation, I think Chelsea have a big possibility to do something in this transfer window. And there will be clubs across Europe who feel a real pinch from the shutdown and the financial consequences of it, and feel obliged to sell players. And there could be opportunities there for the money that you do have to go further. Because, as we said, you don't have to pay 70, 80 million. You might only have to pay 30, 40. But it's so difficult to talk in certainties about this transfer market, because we just don't know.
So you've started the Mbappe to Chelsea rumor right now, which is great. I'm glad we got into that. I mean, it is interesting, right? You kind of have a confluence of events happening. You have a global recession that is likely to last for some time, and could be made worse if there is a second true wave of coronavirus in the fall. You have I think in your piece you wrote that Roman hasn't lost as big a percentage of his overall net worth as someone like Jim Ratcliffe has during this time, or Richard Branson has, or some of these other billionaires who are heavily invested in different industries, right, that are maybe more affected by the pandemic. And you have clubs without the financial stability of Chelsea who are looking to potentially figure out how they can bring in new talent without spending a bunch of money, thus meaning they're probably going to have to balance their books by selling some of these players. So it could be really, really interesting to see, if there really was an interest in Moussa Dembele from Lyon, for example, and the rumor was 80 million pounds to get him to Chelsea, if that really is a 30 million pound player now, it'll be kind of interesting to see if that really happens. But yeah, I want to get your thoughts, because we've talked to over the last few weeks, we've talked to Naz and we've talked to a bunch of other folks about how the transfer, we had an episode called the transfer market will never be the same, or something like that. It sounds like you're slightly more bullish on that take, thinking that Chelsea will be able to spend.
Well, I'm bullish on the fact that they will have the option, unless this shutdown really does escalate. We don't finish the season. Football is away for a lot longer, and Chelsea do feel they have to make tougher financial decisions down the line. I think with things as they stand, they will have an option to spend a bit, and it will all be relative. They might not, as I said, they might not have to spend that much in order to get quite good players to improve this squad. It will all depend on different clubs across Europe and their different financial circumstances. And I think what you've seen over the last few years with Chelsea is that they are, I think, one of the smarter clubs at identifying value generally. There have been notable missteps,
getting drink water,
player identification. Yeah, and identifying the right players to buy is a different question. And Chelsea have a mixed record on that in the last few years. But in terms of getting value from the market, sometimes for players they buy, more often for players they sell, I think Chelsea have done relatively well on that front. And this will be a window, I think, where those qualities are even more vital if you're going to do good business. Now, the flip side of it for Chelsea is that if for example, they wanted to move on from Kepa and sign a better keeper, this is not the window to sell him, because you could not possibly sell any lower than you would be right now with the market as it is. And so if there are big clubs with players to offload, I think they potentially face some pretty difficult decisions. I don't think Chelsea are going to do that with Kepa, first of all. I think they're going to give him an opportunity to grow and improve because it's the only choice that makes sense, really, financially. But purchasing, there should be opportunities, yeah.
All right. Well, as we dive into it a little bit, obviously we know that Olivier Giroud, Willy Caballero, and Tino Anjorin have signed 1 or 5 year extensions, depending on their age. You tell me which went to who. It sounds like Tammy Abraham is likely to sign a new contract. But there's a few names that it sounds like might be leaving, Liam. So we thought maybe we could do a yes, they're leaving, a maybe or a no kind of rating system on these names. So we don't need to talk long on them. But first one up is just Michy Batshuayi. Do you think he will be leaving Chelsea this summer? And by the way, we haven't even talked about when this is all happening. So we're just going to pretend like that will be determined later. It sounds like August, September type time frame. But anyways, what minor details, don't get tripped up on that, listeners. So Michy.
The only thing that stops me saying a definite yes is that Chelsea have always wanted to get value from any Batshuayi sale. And as I've just said with Kepa, this is not really the window for getting value for players you don't want.
And even his last year of the contract, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the definitive factor here, because Chelsea are not going to let him go for free. So I think it might be one that drags on for a little while over the window. But I would lean towards yes with Batshuayi, because it's so clear that Lampard doesn't think he can rely on him now. He's been overtaken by Giroud in the pecking order. Giroud's got another year, and they could potentially be looking to bring in another centre forward as well. So I would lean towards yes with Batshuayi.
We know that Pedro has already kind of said some goodbyes, so it appears that this is a firm yes. But wanted to get your take on Pedro.
Yeah, I think, heading into the shutdown, it was a definite yes. I think it's still a yes. He's not played much football this year. They've got 2 young wingers that are pillars of their future plans in Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi. Whether Willian stays, we'll get onto him. But I think they're probably looking to bring in another winger as well. Whether that player is more of a forward who can play wide, which is why Chelsea were interested in Dries Mertens originally, or whether it's 2 separate players, we'll see. But I think they are looking for another player who can play wide. They've obviously got Hakim Ziyech coming in as well, so there aren't going to be any more minutes for Pedro next season than there would be this year. I think it's time for him to go.
So obviously Willian, right after that, a lot of conversation. He wants a 3-year deal. Chelsea, sounds like they maybe offered him a 2-year deal and he balked at it. And then obviously the pandemic hit. So he is one I think is, as you talk about clubs looking for bargain buys, you could do worse than Willian in the Premier League.
Yeah, his is a really interesting situation when you factor in the shutdown and what it does to the transfer market, because I would have said a couple of months ago, the chances of him getting a 3-year deal from any top Premier League club would have been virtually nil. Because it's not the way, it's certainly not the way Chelsea operate with players over the age of 30. It's not been traditionally the way that Daniel Levy operates at Tottenham. And Arsenal, I think the way they're trying to do things now, they're going a bit younger too. So 3 years looked a bit optimistic, but he might get it now. He won't get it from Chelsea. I'm pretty confident of that, unless he's willing to budge and agree to a shorter deal. We know that Lampard would still like to have him around. So if he's willing to compromise, which he's shown no willingness to do so far, then he could still stay. But I would probably say that's a yes, he's leaving. Because I wrote about him a week or two ago, and there have been no conversations with the club about a longer term extension for several months now. The only conversation that needs to be had soon is on a temporary extension so that he can see out the season, and I'm told that he's happy to do that.
He's 32 August 9th, Nick. So just for perspective, you'd be looking for a 3-year deal that, essentially you get him for, 32, 33, 34. I don't know.
As a 32-year-old, I've never felt closer to being put out to pasture
Oh my
than when we have this conversation. I mean, it's just hilarious. Another one that we've seen, Liam, quickly is the left back situation. It's one that I think a lot of people have been talking about between Alonso or Emerson. Could you see one of them going this summer?
Yeah, I think it's very likely that one of them goes, at least. It's possible that both of them go. I know that when Ian Maatsen signed his new deal with Chelsea a few months ago, he had as the target in his head to be the backup next year to whichever left back Chelsea bring in. Now, that doesn't mean he will be, but that's something he's aiming for. And I think the impression is that neither Alonso nor Emerson are vital to Lampard's future plans. Alonso, because Lampard wants to play as in a back four, and Alonso is not a full-back, he's a wing-back. And Emerson just hasn't quite been good enough. I think it's fairly easy to see how you could upgrade that position.
All right, last one on the out list, Jorginho to Juventus. That is the only option on the table, obviously. Yes, maybe, or no on that one. I know they're throwing swap deals at us too. I know McGleasy on Discord asked about that as well. Do you think Chelsea would be interested in a swap deal for him?
Well, I'm always skeptical whenever swap deals are mooted, because they never ever happen. It's they happen in American sports, but in European football, it's very, very rare to get any sort of swap deal. I would say a maybe on Jorginho. I'm still trying to figure out what that situation is, because every time he's spoken publicly and all the things you hear behind the scenes are that he really likes playing for Lampard. He's really enjoyed, particularly last season, I think he enjoyed the way he was able to change his image with the fans, the match-going fans at least. And I think he was also pleased with the fact that he was no longer viewed as just someone who succeeded in Sarri's system, that he kind of separated himself from that, and people began to appreciate him as a good player in his own right. But at the same time, you get these constant stream of stories suggesting that I don't doubt that Sarri would love to coach him again. So that wouldn't surprise me if Sarri were lobbying Juventus to try and sign him. But I haven't got a clear, firm handle on how Jorginho feels about going back to Italy at this point. I think if you're looking at Chelsea's midfield now, the one that they're probably building around most is Kovacic for the future, rather than Jorginho or Kante. But
seems
Lampard
fair.
But Lampard really likes Jorginho, and I think he respects his leadership qualities on the pitch as well. So if he does go, I think it would be on Chelsea's terms and at Chelsea's price, because he's still got, I think, 3 years left on that contract that he signed.
Yeah.
So Chelsea are in a strong position there. But no doubt, if that became a realistic possibility, I think you'd see a wide range of opinions among Chelsea fans, because he's one of the more polarising figures still.
Without a doubt. Okay. Well, I definitely love the extra context on the Chelsea players. That's, a little bit more sensitive. Now, on the people who might be coming in, I'm far less attached to these people. for obvious reasons. So I'm just going to unless you have like something really specific on him, Liam, we can just do literally yes, maybe, no, and then a couple follow-ups. But I get so scared when we get pinned to transfers because everyone's like, oh, this person and this heat map. And I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't even know. So we're going to keep this very high level on this one. All right. So, right away, yes, maybe, no. I do just want to hear where you think Jadon Sancho is. Big buzz name. Was close, wasn't close. Yes, maybe, no.
I think all I can say is maybe, really.
That's fair.
The information we have of The Athletic, and David Ornstein has been leading the way for us on this, as he does on most transfer stories, is that Manchester United are the clubs that are probably in pole position. But there's still the unresolved element of, would they have Champions League football to offer? How much does that matter to Sancho? And also, what does the shutdown do to his price? Because as recently as January, I think all parties pretty much accepted that he was going to go, and there was a fairly firm price tag attached that you would think one of the interested clubs would be prepared to pay somewhere in the region of £100 million. And now, with the market maybe becoming a bit more depressed in terms of headline figures, there isn't necessarily a clear incentive for Dortmund to sell unless he really pushes to leave this summer. There's not necessarily an incentive to sell. I mean, the things that recommend Chelsea as suitors for Sancho are all still there. He's still friends with all the homegrown guys. He basically grew up with Abraham, and he knows Hudson-Odoi really well. So it'd be an easy fit in that sense. He fits the broader profile of the squad, and I think the style that they're trying to play. But I'm sure he could work at United as well, where they've got a lot of young wingers and attackers. So it's a difficult one. I still think United are in pole position, but I wouldn't necessarily rule Chelsea out. Maybe is the only option.
Maybe.
There.
Fair enough. Timo Werner, Antonio Rudiger has apparently just been calling, texting, DMing Timo Werner to come to Chelsea. What are your thoughts on him as a potential target? Yes, no, maybe.
I think it's a no. Not because he's not the type of player that Chelsea would be interested in. I think he's exactly the type of forward that would work really well at Chelsea. He's a centre forward, a goal scoring centre forward who can also play wide across the front. Kind of a younger Dries Mertens, that kind of profile of forward. But he wants to go to Liverpool, and Liverpool like him. The
I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't see anything in those two being a cute couple. I don't get it.
Nope.
Oh well. I can understand. What about Go ahead.
Well, the problem Liverpool have at the moment is they have the best front three in world football, and they're all at their peak. So who do you take out for Werner, and why would you be signing a guy who's scoring 20-odd goals in the Bundesliga to be your fourth option? That's the complicating factor there, I think. But I would say it's probably more likely that Liverpool maybe don't go for him and he does one more year in Germany rather than he decides to go somewhere else this summer and that club would be Chelsea. I do think they would be interested in if they were given encouragement, but it seems to be Liverpool first and foremost for him.
All right, this one's it's a lot newer, but Jesus Corona coming from Porto. He's a tricky winger. His agent's been out in the news saying that they've talked to Chelsea. Again, yes, maybe, no.
I mean, it's nothing personal, but you can't sign a player called Corona in these circumstances, can you? You just...
It's not his fault now.
I know, it's not his fault. It's not his fault, but the world's not fair, unfortunately. Corona beer has already seen its value plummet. But no, I don't have a clear handle on the level of Chelsea's interest. So I think that has to be a maybe. They are looking for a winger, so it's certainly possible.
The next one's an interesting one. Coming from the championship, Said Barama is apparently an Algerian tricky winger. So we're switching up our nationalities a bit here. But a guy that currently plays his football a mere minute or two from Stamford Bridge and Brentford. What are your thoughts, or kind of validate this rumor for us?
Well, it came from an Algerian media outlet, La Gazette de Fennec, who have some historic connections to Benrahma. Like they do have connections to him, so it's more likely that those noises have more likely come from his side than from Chelsea's side. That doesn't mean there's nothing in it, and I'm very confident that I think the thing I find hardest to believe about those stories are the figures that are attached to potentially signing Benrahma. 35, 40 million. 35, 40 million. If Chelsea were prepared to pay that, I'm very confident that Brentford would drive him across West London to Stamford Bridge themselves, because they would love
Brentford
to get that kind of money.
They're buying the whole club.
Like, no offense, right? But yeah, I mean, that would be a massive coup for a club like them. But to your point, it's like they would probably, we're in a position of leverage to just be like, yeah, but you'd probably take 10 million, honestly, right now, wouldn't you?
I think Brentford always had it in their heads that Benrahma would go this summer. And part of their model is on raising money from player sales. So it would certainly work for Brentford. It would obviously work for Benrahma. But I really can't see Chelsea doing any sort of deal for him at the prices that have been mentioned. There's maybe not nothing in it, but I would lean towards less likely.
Totally fair. So last two, Nicolas Tagliafico, obviously Chelsea and Ajax becoming warm, and his agent is saying that, hey, he's ready to go. A little bit of an exodus from Ajax right now. So obviously Ziyech has left. Onana has said he's leaving. And now Tagliafico is like, yep, I'm ready. Obviously, it's an interesting fit for Chelsea.
Position of need, William. And that's what makes this one interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think when Chelsea are looking at left backs, they will look at high quality options that are available for a reasonable price. And the interesting thing about those stories is that they have pretty firmly established what price it will take to get Tagliafico. And it seems a very achievable one for Chelsea. We're hearing contrasting things at the moment where, we've obviously seen what's been published, but we've also been hearing that there hasn't been direct contact with Chelsea as yet. There's plenty of time for that to happen. It seems more broadly that Ajax are doing what Ajax do when they realise that a team has reached the end of its cycle. The players that are looking to leave are the ones that are on the older edge of this squad. And so it looks like they're going to try and rejuvenate again. And the money from Tagliafico would go towards that. I fully expect him to move this summer. I wouldn't be surprised if it was to Chelsea, but I don't think it's very advanced at this point.
Last one, Kai Havertz. This is like the golden boy, Wunder kid.
This is the sexy one.
Yep. And is there anything in this?
I think he's moved into the bracket that Sancho was in only a few months ago, and probably still is, where I just mean in terms of any major club in Europe would be very happy to have him at this point. He seems to have, he had a really explosive season for Leverkusen last year. He really dipped prior to the shutdown this season, and his stock kind of fell off a little bit as a result, but he's come back really, really well in the last few weeks. And he's catching the eye again as a goal-scoring midfielder. I'm sure Lampard can appreciate that in particular. He certainly does fit the profile of the type of player Chelsea will be looking for. I think that's the age bracket they'll be looking at. The biggest question with him, as with Sancho, is the price tag, because Leverkusen will be looking at anywhere between 70 to 100 million. I don't think he's near the end of his contract. So they're in a fairly strong position. And it just depends on whether Chelsea are willing to pay that much for anyone in the next transfer window, let alone one of the best young players in Europe. But there's no doubt, I think, that he would make Chelsea better. And I think a lot of major clubs in Europe would be very, very happy to have him.
Positional flexibility. He's only 20 years old. Obviously,
so maybe. Very much maybe on that one.
Be silly not to be looking at him, which I can understand and appreciate. Well, thank you so much for giving us the insight into those. Again, for more information, theathletic.com. Liam is on Twitter at Liam_Twomey. All of those links will be in the description. Go check it out. We are paying subscribers and find tons of value from The Athletic. But that is going to wrap us up for this one. The next episode, we'll be talking about Liam's article about when Roman Abramovich took over the club. So you don't want to miss that. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.